if you're taking the risk on it financially and doing venue hires in the other towns or other places, you want to make sure that you're in the best position to do that, because that's your money you're putting into it. So you may as well invest from the start and build enough material for the show that it's really sellable.
G'day. Paul here. Welcome to Self-Produced. In this episode, we're chatting with Kate Malone. Kate is the executive producer of Cluster Arts. Now, Cluster Arts is a production team that supports the presentation and touring of circus performers and their work. So they've done a lot of work. They're almost 10 years old now, and they have toured all over the world with circus performers. And so we're having a chat to Kate today about the basics of starting your very first tour. So if you've got a show that you want to get out there and you are looking to tour it, this is the episode to listen to. She gives us some amazing advice on how to start and where to start putting your very first tour together. So with that, let's dive into my conversation with Kate Malone. Kate Malone from Cluster Arts, thank you so much for coming on Self-Produced. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Paul.
Oh, absolute delight. Was it Montreal you just got in from?
Yes, I spent 3 days in Montreal last week. So I was there for the Montreal International Circus Festival and Conference. So it's the world's largest circus festival. Obviously, with Cirque du Soleil, Montreal is a huge circus city. And we kind of like to say here in Queensland that Brisbane is the second largest circus city outside of Montreal. So there's a lot of kind of similarities between what we do with Australian circus and then what Canadian circus does. So I had a Brisbane show there from Breeze Factory that were presenting as part of the festival, and then I was there also as the market for the marketplace. So selling Cluster Arts now shows to mainly the North American market.
Okay, quick break. This podcast is not sponsored, so I would like to take the opportunity instead to ask you to support an incredible company doing incredible work. Indelibility Arts is a not-for-profit charity. They're a theatre company that creates work with and for people who are disabled and neurodiverse. So they're helping people who are disabled and neurodiverse get onto stage at a professional level, and also helping them create their own work and get that out on stage. It's an amazing company, and they have won multiple awards doing the work that they do. But most importantly, they're helping break down that massive gap in representation for people with disability. So click the link in the description, head over, make a donation. If you're in Australia, anything $2 and over is tax deductible. And if you get the chance to put a comment in there, just let them know you came over from Self-Produced. All right, back to the podcast. So I suppose before we get started, can you give us a little intro about who you are, what Cluster Arts is, just so anybody listening will find out, I guess, because we don't know.
Yeah. So, my name is Kate and I'm the executive producer of Cluster Arts. I started in the arts, or Queensland Arts, when I was 15 as a school-based trainee at Flipside Circus, a youth circus here in Brisbane. And I kind of fell into that role being a very naughty school child and not kind of knowing where to put my energy into. And then started there, got to work there 1 day a week at school. And then when I finished school, I went on full time and was at Flipside for about, I think it was about 13 years I was there. And then my boss at that time, Deb Wilkes, and I, we connected. We were good friends during that time, and in 2015 we started Cluster Arts because we had a training space in Brisbane, and we saw a lot of professional artists come through the space, and they were our trainers for the kids' classes in the afternoon, but then they would make their shows and train themselves during the day. So we got to know these professional circus artists, and I would go on tour with them sometimes, and we realized how hard they were working while also doing the performing as well. So they were doing their own administration, their own producing, their own marketing, their own financials, their own bookkeeping, all of those things that come along with performing and running a business, and
All
they
the
were
bits
amazing
performers
at it.
hate.
Yeah, yeah, but it was so much for them to do, and these professional artists were doing international tours. They were working on some big contracts. And so Cluster Arts, we formed Cluster Arts as a support system to help artists to take away all of that administration and backlog of just all that paperwork that they have to do so that they could focus on the
Mm,
uh, performing, and we could do all the other stuff. So we started Cluster Arts in 2015 with the kind of slogan backstage taking care of business. So we're 10 years old next year, and we've
brilliant.
grown, yeah, considerably in that time. It was just us for a few years there, and then we're a team of 6 now, full time staff. We have a home base in Virginia and Brisbane, and we work with over, I think it's over about 60 artists in total, about 15 companies. But when we
Wow.
first started, a lot of the work we were doing was international because Australian circus is so globally renowned. But since COVID, we've really focused on our national and regional touring. And so we're now, we're funded nationwide to tour our shows. So we have multi-year funding through Creative Australia. We're one of 2 companies that have that in Australia. So and then we also have Arts
Oh,
Queensland funding,
really?
yeah, to tour into the region. So basically, that's why we're doing so much
Brilliant.
touring, because we can support the artists with all of the costs of the travel, accommodation, per diems, and all of that. So yeah, we're touring
Yeah.
more in the regions and in Australia than we ever have. So yeah, we do the producing and the building tours for artists, but then we also do we do their finances, their budgets, their contracts, their scheduling. We're much more than just kind of agents in the way of and selling and buying work. There's we do everything we do is around the artists and supporting them. So whatever they need, we provide the artistic infrastructure so that they can get up on stage and perform and
Yeah.
not have to worry about all the other stuff. And we can do the worrying for them.
Love it. So what look, I I obviously have my own company as well, producing shows, and have taken the decision for the first few years, particularly, to not tour because I mean I've been on a tour or two before as an actor, and it's so much expense. Like it's an expensive undertaking. So, what do people see the benefits of touring? Like, what I see a lot of companies that, particularly small companies that want to go out and tour pretty early into what they're doing, and I just don't understand. Is it what are the real benefits for it? I guess is having not really produced my own tour, going out somewhere with my shows. I haven't experienced that benefit, so I don't really know what it is. But what would you say the sort of benefits are of touring a show to other locations like that?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is financial. There's just not enough work. While most of our companies are from Brisbane, there's not enough opportunities to just kind of perform where you are. So it really, the artists that we work with,
Yeah,
this is their full-time job. This is what they do, and so there has to be enough touring, and we have to be getting out to as many places just for them to survive. I guess it's
yeah,
we
right. So it's
don't
really
we
about
don't yeah
performance pipeline,
it,
really.
exactly. It's about a job. It's about that they are really
Yeah,
passionate about um, touring into the regions, and also, like, I guess different answer for an artist and then for a company. So say for
mm,
example, the company I was talking about before in Montreal, Briefs Factory, they're very consciously engaged in wanting the values of their show, wanting to take that out to specific areas in regional and remote communities because their company centers around LGBTQI plus and diversity and all of that. And so for them, yes, it's about earning money and the work, but it's also about developing audiences' understanding of what they are talking about in the show. So it's very value based as well.
Yeah. So really spreading that mission further afield.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, great. So what I really wanted to chat to you today about was just a starting point for anybody that was looking to tour. So what would somebody, so say myself, let's use me as an example, but if I was going to go out and I wanted to tour, what are the kind of foundational things that I need to be thinking about before embarking on that? So what are the things that I need to be thinking about in the lead up to that, and then what are the, I guess, the basic things that you need to start thinking about to do to actually start booking a tour? How do you
Mm.
choose destinations, that sort of thing? So where would someone start if they were just coming up to the idea of wanting to do their first tour?
Yeah, so I guess going back to the very beginning, is the show ready to tour in the way that it's sellable? So will people buy tickets to it? Is it good enough for people to spend, $25-$30 plus on a ticket? So if it's still very early on in a show's development or a show's phase, I guess we suggest doing one of the fringe festivals as a platform to run a show in, build an understanding of how the audiences take that show, gather reviews and feedback and all of that of the show. Because if you have nothing marketable, you can't sell the show. So doing a fringe run or a local
Mm.
season where you are to build up all of that material is good. So it's one thing to say we do have a show, but we don't really have any uh, great photos or reviews, or we don't really know who the target audience is. That's hard to then sell yourself in other locations, or how do you talk about yourself in that way? So we always kind of, when we work with new shows, uh, it suggests they do not a long, but at least a week, 2 week season to run a show in to understand, yeah, and get feedback on how that show goes. And then once you've got that kind of show ready, you've got the marketing materials ready, you've got answers to how you would sell the show. Then it's about, there's two models of touring, which is the buy-ins, which is what you want because it's the best financially. And that's when venues or festivals will pay for your show. And so you don't have to worry about the marketing. You don't have to worry about if there's one person or 200 people in the audience because you're getting a fee for it. But then that's the harder way to do it, because you need to, very kind of well established shows are able to do this. But if you're really starting from the early stages, most shows you see around the touring circuit will be venue hires. So it's hiring the venue from the local council or wherever it is, and then doing all the marketing and the ticketing and doing everything yourself. So obviously the buy-in, everything is done for you and you get the fee, and it's great. Whereas the venue hire model, you're hiring it and you're taking the risk, and it can pay off, and you can do really well. But then you also need to understand your audiences and how to market to them in a town that you're not in, and all those kind of things. So there's two
Yeah.
separate ways to do it. And when you're looking, I guess it's looking at, when you want to say, if you say I want to do a regional tour of Queensland. Queensland's really hard because we're also so big. We're a very big state. Whereas
Huge.
you can do a Victorian tour and hit 20 venues in probably you could, or not 20 venues, but a lot of venues in a 2 week tour, and basically do the whole of the state. Whereas Queensland, it's a lot more expensive. Getting from one place to the next can take a few days, and so it's really it might be starting small and doing the south, the southwestern touring circuit, which is like a little clump, and then going up and just going down or up the east coast. So it's really, I think, thinking about it practically, and um, something that's achievable for you, and then and pitching it. It's about just going to venues and councils and pitching it and see what comes out from that pitching of it.
Brilliant. So that's a lot. There's a lot to think about there. I think one thing that popped into my mind too, in that sense of preparing your show as you develop the show, you would probably want to be thinking about the design of that show from a touring perspective if you think you might want to tour it down the track, wouldn't you?
Mm.
So you'd
Oh,
really be
so
thinking really that far back, wouldn't you?
yeah, in early development
Potentially.
stages. Yeah. And it's okay to have big shows. Big shows can tour, but it's going, okay, well, how do you tour a show that has a big set, and can't just be, put
Mm,
into the back of your car? That's why Circus is so great in a way, because it's very set minimal. We do a lot of
yeah.
travel via just excess bags, not freight. And so there's bigger shows and shows that have sets can do it, but there are a lot. You've just got to be thinking what kind of venues, if you want to go on not just a big theatre. If you say you do your season at QPAC, for example, you're and then say you want to do a Queensland tour, you're not going to have the same venue like you did at QPAC to what you're going to have in Mount Isa.
Yeah.
So it's about, is the show adaptable? Can you
Is it
reconfigure
scalable
it?
up and down?
Scalable up and down, and make it
Mm,
as it's making it as sellable as you can without compromising on like what the show is, the quality of the show, I guess.
yeah. Brilliant. And I love that idea then of, I think we need to be honest with ourselves about
Mm.
where is this show in its stage, in its development. I think that's a really key point that you mentioned there about, you know, when we're early in the process, don't go out and tour just yet, because you need to have all of that stuff for a good presenter pack, isn't it? Like the
Oh,
marketing shots, the reviews, the quotes,
yeah.
that kind of thing. So
And
doing
if
that
you're
initial
taking the
season somewhere.
Yeah, if you're taking the risk on it financially and doing venue hires in the other towns or other places, you want to make sure that you're in the best position to do that, because that's your money you're putting into it. So you may as well invest from the start and build enough material for the show that it's really sellable when you go out there, and do that. You do see it. We kind of say to artists it takes 18 months from a show being made, first season, whether that's at a fringe or at its first location, to when the show gets traction and starts really making money back. So that's a huge amount of time to kind of invest in a show and a production, and the time, it's a long time. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, but
I think
that's
that's really
just
key, because I don't think a lot of us think in lead times like that. I
mm,
think we're, as creatives, more often than not, we're so fixated on getting the product made that we're not thinking about any of that stuff at all. And then it's a bit of a kick in the guts for a lot of people when it does take that 18 months to 2 years for it to really tick over. So I think it's a mindset thing of actually thinking, this is the long tail, this is a long process. It's going to take me
keeping
this long for it to get it. So
keeping the
from
momentum up for it as well. It's because venues, a lot of venues. So where are we now? At the moment, we're July. We're halfway through the year in 2024, but we're really looking at uh, into the late 25, 26 now for bookings, because that's
for
just where
bookings,
that venues are full. You can't just go, oh great, we've got a show, we've done our fringe season, so I want to do, like, we premiered it last month, so June 24, I want to do a tour in October this year. Your venues are going to be booked out already, so it is about,
mm.
it's the long term. You've got to wait, you've got to, bide that time.
So are you, with say a new project, a new product that someone's got? I mean, obviously, you guys are probably in a process where you know that cycle, you know that process, you know if a show's gonna, if the show, if the company or the team making that show have a reputation for the work,
Mm.
then you're gonna know the, I guess the lead times and the process that they're going to follow. For somebody starting out, would you recommend that they're trying to book that tour 18 months away from when they get that show ready, or should they get that initial season done and then get through all of that and then start looking at 18 to 24 months for the tour from there?
I think probably waiting until you've got the marketing material ready, because it's hard. Not that you don't need to have everything, but if you're trying to um, sell it to a venue, it's hard to do that without that information. So it's,
Of
we
course.
say 18 months. It can happen a lot earlier. Especially like you could
Yeah.
go out there if you say we've got 2 months that we want to tour next year. You could do a venue, you could hire the venue, that would be fine. But if you're
Mm,
trying to, because it doesn't matter, you don't need to have all your marketing materials ready. You've got time
of
later
course.
to do it.
Yeah.
It's if you're trying to go down the mode of
The
selling the
buy-in
show,
line.
then you need all of that information. But it'd be easy enough to go
Yeah.
ahead and book the venues and then kind of work your way backwards from there. Um, yeah, it just depends, I guess, which mode you're going
Yeah.
down.
Great. Yeah. And again, just that forward thinking about what is the mode that we're going to be able to go
Yeah,
based on where this show is in its production time. Yeah. Great. Great.
yeah.
Um, so presenter packs, from your point of view, having that marketing stuff ready for being able to sell to venues and presenters, what would you say are the kind of key things? You've mentioned reviews, photos, an understanding of the target market and the show
Mm.
brief. Is there anything else that you would absolutely recommend goes into a presenter pack?
Tech info, probably. It doesn't have to be your full tech
Mm,
writer, but just like a half page, one page, really easy to look at, to go running time, 60 minutes, minimum stage dimensions, 6 meters by 6 meters. For circus, we say, does it need aerials, or is it a ground based show? Basic sound and light requirements. That as well is important. Types, intended audiences, so whether it is 18 plus or family friendly, those kind of a snapshot. We try to keep presenter packs fairly short and condensed, because it's not, you don't need
yeah,
to give all your marketing and all the information. At the moment, you're just selling the show to a presenter that hopefully they're buying it from that. So it's just that key information that they can look at a quick glance and go, okay, it's a 60-minute show.
yeah,
It's for families. Oh, it's had some great reviews. Touring history, it's been here. How many are in the cast? That's important if you're asking them to pay for the travel costs for the staff, for the cast and crew. So if a 3-person show is a lot cheaper to tour than a 10-person show. So those really,
yeah,
um, at a quick glance to see, okay, this show is doable, or it's too big, or it's the right size. Yeah.
yeah. So with a buy-in situation where you're actually selling it and the presenter, the venue is purchasing the show and bringing it in,
Mm.
what are the things that people need to think about in regards to the pricing of that? Is it a per show price? Is it a weekly price? How do you guys set up the pricing around that side of it?
Generally, if a show's going into a festival, it might do a few shows. So we normally always will give a per show fee, and then if it's a festival, a weekly fee as well. And normally the weekly fee isn't 6 shows times the one show fee. It is reduced if you're doing the full
Yeah,
week, because it's better value to buy it for a week than it is, just to do the one show. Um, Generally, if you're doing venue to venue touring, for the most part, it will be one night onlys. So it's thinking also about, especially if we're talking regionally compared to um, just going into metro venues, costs. at the moment it's really hard because costs of everything, inflation has just made everything so much more expensive.
It's
So shows
crazy.
that can um, bump in and do a show that afternoon, that night, are much better value for venues because they don't, if it's a 2 day bump in, then they have to pay their crew for 2 days and all that extra staff, not just from your artist's end, but from the venue as well. So it's thinking about
Yep.
can you get the show in and do a show that night? Um, and that will also support whatever the fee is. But I'd always have your one-off show fee and have an idea of what your weekly show will be. And normally it's a few $1,000s. Say if you had a show that was 3,000 a show, and for a 6 show run in a week, it might be 14,000, and it's a few $1,000s cheaper if you were not going to do the 6 times 3. But it's
Yeah.
yeah, you're just trying to make it a bit more viable.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you're looking at
Yeah.
the
Sort of.
one show fee.
Yeah, that's more often, right? Okay.
Mm.
And it makes sense that you kind of give a bulk discount because you're not paying for 6 days of transport and freight and all that kind of stuff. That those savings, once you're there and set up, you really the costs are associated with the performers' fees from
Exactly.
that point on.
And always
So that makes
always be
sense.
really clear whether your fee includes travel or whether you need travel on top of what your fee is. To be really clear from the start helps with any kind of surprises when you start, going through the contract. So the fee is $3,000 plus the venue needs to pay for travel, accommodation, per diems, and freight, or it's a $4,000 fee, and that we will organise everything and we cover everything. So you either absorb it in your fee, or if you've got funding, you use that. But if you don't have funding, you could either work out what it's going to cost you, and it's a fee that covers
Yeah.
everything, which for some regional towns is a lot more appealing because they don't want to think about what are the other costs. They just want to know what it's going to cost them for you to come and do the show.
Yeah.
So it's
So they're happy to
easy.
pay a slightly higher fee for you to just take care of it all.
Yeah, yeah. But then
Yeah.
if
Great.
if you've got the capacity to do that, it's yeah. Again, it's the whether you can, but it from a venue's point of view, they
Yeah.
just want to know how much it's going to cost, and not have to worry about the other
Yeah.
things. Mm.
Yeah. It makes sense. Cool. All right. So heading into touring locations, we're handling everything ourselves from the marketing point of view. So we've hired the venue. We don't have
Yep.
the leverage of a marketing team at a venue to help support the marketing, the advertising. Maybe the venue can do some little social posts, but for the most
Mm.
part, we're actually going to have to handle all the marketing ourselves. Where does someone start? Going into a new place to market a show. They've never been there before.
Mm.
What's the ground level kind of thinking that we need to be applying to do that? Because we're going to have to do that in every single place that we go, aren't we?
Yeah, it's taking a step back and going, why am I going to this particular place? So, yes, because we think the show will work well here. Or why do you think? Is it if you've got a family show? Is it because you've seen other shows go there before and it's been successful, or it's a town that's dealing with a lot of youth crime, and your show has youth in it or has kind of issues around that. So that is it's kind of really targeted to that audience. So rather than just going, oh, we're just going here because it looks really cool and we're just gonna, we think the show will work here. It's going, well, what do audiences need in that town? So it might be doing a bit of research in your town, and you can make very loose, translations on how it fits into, what your show is.
Yeah,
It's for the most part, especially if we're talking regionally, the venues will be run by the local council, And so, yes, they'll put it up on their website and might do a few social posts. But we've kind of, over the last few years, have gone into this habit of trying to build town champions in the towns that we go into, because we're not the experts in the towns that we're going into. And if you can find someone that can really champion that work for you, that can print out the posters, can stick them around the cafes, that knows the local mums groups, or is a part of that kind of community, and there you can pay them a little bit of money to kind of do the work for you. And that's,
Mm.
how do you find a town champion? It might be going on to, most towns and places these days have those little um, Facebook groups of, that area where they ask for recommendations or whatever. So it might be joining those groups and saying, hey, we're
Mm.
bringing a show into town. Does anyone want a few $100s to help out and help, market this show? And so we've done that in the past, and that has worked really. So rather than us assuming how to do it in each town, it's all very different, and it's finding that we like to find that person to do the job for us.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. They've got the local knowledge, they've got the local connections. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And every
that's a
town's going to
genius
be
idea.
different. Yeah, every town's going to be different.
Yeah,
And like it might be one of the cafe owners in the town, or it might be like a school principal. If you've got a family show and you're coming in and doing some school shows, I think it really depends on. It's just reaching out to asking the venue when you book it. Is there anyone we want to pay someone a few $100s to do this? Is there anyone you would recommend that is a part of the theatre there, or part of the subscriber list, who comes to everything, who you think could help us market this show? So it's about asking for support, I
yeah,
think, and not assuming you need to do it all on your own, because you don't.
love it. What are you finding is really kind of the most um, effective, I guess, kind of marketing stuff at the moment? Like, is it posters, flyers, Facebook ads? Are you just doing a mix of everything? What are you finding is really working the most at the moment?
It depends what age group that we're trying to sell to. So we do a
Oh,
lot
interesting.
of our most popular work, touring works in the regions, is probably family work, because it's easy to tour, it's accessible, anyone can come to it,
Yeah.
it's cheap to tour. Family work just is cheaper to tour. Ticket prices are lower for children's work compared to adults only, or those or the late night shows. So a
Hmm.
lot of time it's connecting with schools. So we do have posters that get printed and go out, but a lot of the time we've got Caroline, who works at Cluster Arts, who's our regional tour coordinator, and she spends a lot of time. And see, it is a time-consuming thing, but connecting with the schools,
Yeah.
which is, I couldn't think of anything worse, because it's so hard to like keep a school contact and develop that relationship, and they're always so busy with a million one other things. Your little project's not a priority, but if you can get on board with like
Yeah.
a school in that kind of way and have those school kids come to it, that's been huge for us. It's word of mouth, it really is, and that's why that kind of
Yeah.
town champion or local person that can spruik it. um, you can put all the posters up in the world, but that doesn't mean people are gonna, clue on to what it
No.
is. Or yeah,
It's
social media.
so crazy, isn't it, that in today's high tech world, word of mouth really still is the best marketing tool we can tap into. Like, it's so
Still, yeah,
crazy.
yeah. And I mean, the
Yeah.
Facebook ads and Instagram ads, all of that works, but you also, um, if when we do big seasons at like that Edinburgh Fringe Festival, when we've got 10,000 tickets to sell in a month, or when we're investing a lot of money into it, we engage a social media expert. But I personally, I have tried to do the Facebook ads in towns that I'm not in, and it's hard
Yeah.
to navigate that. So that is a way, and that is successful because you can at least, it's hard to quantify like the word of mouth thing, whereas at least with the social media ads, you can see the result of it and see, um, every $10 you spent, you sold $5 worth of tickets or whatever. So that's really clear
Yeah.
to see the outcome. But you also have to have the
Yeah.
knowledge on how to do that. And it's changing
Yeah.
all the time.
It's a really all the time. Yeah, it's crazy. I think it's a really good point. Yeah, one of my favorite phrases that I stole from another marketer is the concept of who, not how. It's like
Yeah,
sometimes you just got to find the person to delegate the job to, and hopefully that person is more of an expert than you. And
yeah,
I think at the indie side of it, I the first season of Peter Rabbit that we did last year, yeah, I knew I wasn't going to have time to run Facebook ads and manage those because that can be a timely process. And I had a friend who was running Facebook ads who I just said, look, whatever we sell, I'll just give you 30% of the value that's come through the ads. And he was more than happy with that because ultimately it wasn't going to be a lot, but it meant that he felt like he was getting some value out of it. It meant that I didn't have to manage it, and there
yeah.
was, it was the better the ads did, the more he got paid. So that kind of worked out well for
Yeah,
everybody.
and
But
it is,
yeah,
it's becoming more and more of a thing, the ads and the social media, and I'm a little bit scared to embrace it because it's so much. But also, I think as an indie, I
yeah,
think it's good to, you can do short courses and do like, and it's not that expensive to invest in that yourself to learn how to do it because it is actually,
yeah,
it's a really good marketing tool, and it's not going
yeah,
away. So it is a good investment
yeah.
to learn that. Again, you're doing, it's one more
I,
thing you're doing, but it's a good marketing tool.
Yeah, and I think the other side to that too for me is investing in your knowledge to the point where you can confidently talk to someone else about it. So if you are hiring
Mm,
someone or delegating that job out, you know enough to be able to have a meaningful conversation about the metrics and the ad
exactly.
spend and the ad sets and understanding all of the structure of it so
Yeah.
that you're not being kind of bamboozled by it, confused by it as well. It's a really
Yeah.
great point. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Cool. I love it. All right. What was my other question?
There's so many
Presenter
things.
packs, we've talked about marketing. I know there's so much. There's so much. But I think so. The key things that we've really kind of hit on, I think that are super important is again that sense of beginning with the end in mind. If you're thinking you might want to tour a show, start thinking about that from the development of the show. Put that
That's right.
into your set design and the concepts about how easy will this be to pack down, move it to a new location. How would we do that? The costs associated with that. Get that initial season done so that you can get reviews, photos, and get a really strong but brief presenter pack together that's got the technical information in it as well. And that gives you the collateral really to be able to then go out and either market it yourself or provide that to a venue that's going to buy you in to be able to do that. And
And
so
I
then
think
it's
that's
it's
important.
I'm
Sorry, Paul,
guessing really
just to
yep.
define the understanding between the venue hire and the buy-in, and because that kind of language is what
Mm,
you're, because a venue might ask you, or they'll just assume that they want you to, they venue might assume that you're wanting them to buy them in and just, ignore you or not give you the time of day. But then to know that there are two ways of doing it, I think is really important.
yeah, that's key distinctions. Yeah, that's really great. And then from the marketing point of view, obviously, if you've got that, really important to know your target audience. Who is this audience for? I loved before when you sort of talked about researching the locations to find out a little bit about them. How would you go about that research? Is it kind of getting into those Facebook groups? Is it looking for news articles? How do you recommend people start to do a bit of that research around an area to go, is this going to be a right fit for our show?
Yeah, so I'll give you another example with my company, Breeze Factory. So we got, it was a buy in. We got offered to do a gig in Mount Isa. And
Hmm.
Mount Isa is a mining town. It's very conservative. It's, my
Very
understanding
remote,
of
very
it,
conservative. Yeah.
it's very remote. It's not I didn't think it was your typical audience for a drag cabaret male burlesque show. It's not. You don't say Mount Isa and those words associated with it. And Fez, the
Yeah.
director
No.
of, said we were going into Mount Isa, and he freaked out. He's like, as this 6'4" Samoan drag queen, he was like, I don't want to go to Mount Isa. It's too scary. And then I did a bit
I
more
saw
research.
Priscilla.
Yeah, I did a bit more research on Mount Isa, and I looked at they voted no to when the same-sex marriage law was being passed. That town voted no, but there was a lot of underlying articles and interesting just kind of facts about the town. I learned and I went, this is the linkage. It's not that they have a very big queer culture or they're loud and proud. It's actually the fact that they have really nothing and they need it. And so we went there and we played with James Blundell, the country singer, was our kind of warm up to the brief show. And I've never, still to this day, seen
Oh
an audience
wow.
react so positively to briefs in this tiny regional mining community. All these cowboys were loving the boys, and it was what the town needed, and that linkage was that it just the audience was they were craving it, even though that they didn't know they needed it. The town needed it. And so I think it was just about doing a bit of research and as I said, it was a buy-in, so we weren't marketing it. But if I was marketing it, that would be the way of, doing it in a not super loud, proud, gay kind of vibe, but the tone would have been a
Yeah.
lot more safer to welcome them in without kind of screaming in their face.
Do you know how the venue marketed that show? Like
Just to
what their
cover.
messaging was to connect people to it?
Yeah, they really there was nothing about kind of queer culture or anything like that. It was some big cowboy night. And for some reason, they invited briefs. It was very strange.
Right.
But yeah, it was just marketed as a cabaret show. And because Mount Isa is so small, like we
Interesting.
got to the airport and like everyone at the airport knew who we were. And um, because it was something so different and the marketing images were great, it
Yeah.
was comfortable, it popped, people wanted to come to it because it was so different, I think. And so that's the kind of
Amazing.
angle that they leaned on, was that this is the first of its kind coming here.
Ah.
Mm.
Yeah, brilliant.
That's
Yeah,
a
very
very
clever.
specific example, but there'll always be, it can, as I said before, like it can be a very loose linkage. We've got a show called The Bee
Yeah.
Story, which is about a queen bee and a worker bee that are impacted by the bushfires. And so obviously it would work kind of anywhere that there have been bushfire. I mean, anyone in Australia knows about the bushfires. So even if a
Yeah.
town doesn't have
Yeah,
that, you can kind of
absolutely.
find that linkage with, this is about
It's
climate
an
change or
Australian story. It's
story and
yeah,
all that kind of stuff. So you can find, if you're clever, you can find that very loose linkage and connect it to that town.
that's
And it's
great.
just about understanding that town just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, just so important to understand that target audience and really do your research around them. I think it's
Because
a
the,
it's a
the
it's a real
audiences,
area that a lot of people don't think about.
no, well, the audiences there will respect that you've taken the time to understand them. If you just go in and expect that you've got this good show, it might be a great show. It doesn't matter how great your show is. If the audiences don't connect to it, they're not going to buy a ticket to it. So they're going to respect it a lot
Yeah,
more and come to it if they have that kind of personal connection to it.
brilliant. So we get there, we've marketed, the show's happened. If you have the buy-in version, the venue's probably going to be maintaining the ticket data. Is that something that you can negotiate with the venue to get access to the audience data so that you can directly build a relationship with them? Or does that not happen very often? Or how
No,
does
you
that
can
kind of play?
definitely. It always it's the they'll have a normally when you buy a ticket on any ticketing website, I guess they have the option whether they can be contacted by the company that you're purchasing the ticket for, not just the venue.
Yeah.
So normally in a contract, you can make sure if you're writing the contract, you can write it in and see what the venue says, or if you're getting a contract from a venue, you can just make sure that that's at least negotiable. That for not
Mm.
you can't email every single person that came to the show, but if they've
Yeah.
ticked the, you know, I'm happy to be kept updated with blah productions, um, then that's fine, and that's your database to use. And it's about using it smartly, I think, as well, not bombarding
Yeah.
them, but what's the next step in your development with them?
But yeah, and that was the next kind of conversation point, I think, is if you do get that data, if it's not a place that you're going to be probably possibly for another year or 18 months, maybe 2 years, how do you maintain a connection with that audience at that distance, knowing that there's not going to be anything there for you? What's that communication look like?
Probably, I think, like, especially if this is your first kind of tour, or you don't have a lot of data, it is good to send a follow up email after the show and get some feedback. So, a really short feedback form that at least you can get some key uh, info or stats from kind of the demographic that came, a quote or two from audience members, those kind of things. And then the follow up, the immediate follow up would be, well, like our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram to be kept updated so that they're constantly being updated rather than just kind of sitting on a database and not being contacted
Mm.
again in 2 years. It's inviting them to come along on your journey by following you on all the million social platforms that there are now.
All of them and more. Yeah, brilliant. Great. That's been awesome. Thank you so much. Like, to get that insight from someone that's regularly dealing with independent companies touring is just so valuable. And I think uh, there's still so much more to dig into. Like, I think we could probably have a hour
Oh
long
yeah.
chat just about marketing stuff. But I think as an introduction sort of insight in, there's some really great gold in there. So thank you so much for sharing all that today. That's awesome.
No, thank you, Paul. And I think one final thing. I think it's hard. You know, it's hard pitching your show
Yeah.
to venues who don't know you. You know, it's a lot easier if you have that reputation but for the most part, when indies are starting out, they don't. And so it's about knowing your worth in it. And you know, if you're investing in it, and if you really want your show to tour, it can happen. But it's about asking people for help, going to the resources like Arts Queensland and Stage Queensland and the organisations that are there to kind of support indies. You don't have to do it alone. There's a lot of information online about different tour circuits and support and funding available. So it's not kind of each for their own. There is support around that can help you do it.
Yeah. Brilliant. That's awesome. There's a lot to digest there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.